Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Morris? Commissioner Brule?
Here.
Commissioner Gordon? Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Commissioner Beller?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Meal?
Here.
Chairman Azarmi.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
We're waiting for the automated announcements.
Anyone who has not signed in, please do so at the table located in the lobby. Should anyone wish to speak, please complete a request to speak form, which is also located on the lobby table next to the sign-in sheet. A request to speak form must be completed for each item you would like to speak on. Please note, there are stairs on the right, left, and center aisles, and we ask that you use caution when using the stairs. There is also a ramp located to the audience's left. If anyone has written comments, exhibits, petitions, photos, or letters they intend to present at today's meeting, have 17 copies and give them to a staff member at the back of the auditorium. Staff member, please hold up your hand for the audience. If you do not have 17 copies, you may use the overhead camera to present your documents. Please place your documents on the podium and line it up with the arrows indicated. If you want your documentation to go on record, you must hand them to the clerk after your presentation with the agenda item number clearly marked on the documentation. Members of the public cannot speak to staff members that are seated at the tables with microphones during the meeting. If you have questions, please see the staff member located in the back of the auditorium. All speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to make their presentation statements. Everyone, please turn off all cell phones or place them on vibrate during the meeting. If you must take a call, please leave the meeting area and go outside to have your conversation. We also ask the audience to refrain from talking with one another during the presentations and discussions. Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Everyone attending the meeting is asked to remember that the administrative building and campus are tobacco-free areas, which means no smoking is allowed from curb to curb. No food or drinks are allowed in the auditorium except for bottled water. If there are any items remaining on the agenda, the Commission will break for lunch for 1 hour per the Chairman's discretion.
Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward it a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The items with a recommendation made by the Commission will be heard by the Board of Supervisors on Monday, December 3rd, 2018, at 9:30 a.m. in the same location, with the exception of any continued items. I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the last month.
I'll make that motion to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Call to the public. Seems we don't have anybody for the call to the public, but if there's a question, ask me. Maybe Bob, you can answer. Call to the public for the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that has to be related to the land use or any subject? Because they asked me if they had to be related to, the land use ordinance, or is it like, anything they want to talk about?
Well, the commission really doesn't have jurisdiction over a lot of issues that might be presented in the call to the public. I guess as a courtesy, you could remind people that, what your purpose is. It's to regulate and assure the orderly development of land. And other than that, I don't, there's nothing written that says that someone can't get up and address the commission.
Yeah, especially that we are an advisory board and we have no really control over the items. We just, make our recommendation to the board. So basically, the answer is the land use ordinance topics, right?
Yes, it should be limited to that. This commission would not be abusing the public if it did limit the
It's
call
not,
to
it's not like an open tribune, so they can talk about whatever weather or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Item 1?
Item number 1 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 402-32126 from an AR agricultural residential zone to a C2 general commercial zone to allow for a storage facility in the Beaver Dam vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Thank you. We have nobody signed up for this particular item. Do we have, you have signed up? I don't have the paper. Could you state your name and your address for the record?
My name is Donna Kraus, and I'm here today from Mojave Engineering, who represents the owner, and I'm just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, so you're representing the applicant. Okay, I have a question for you. In the staff recommendation, they talk about like legal access to the property. Could you elaborate on that? Where are you at with the legal access to this property?
Right now, they are working with the county, and they are working with the property owners surrounding the area to provide that legal access. They are going through proper channels to secure that.
Okay, so you're aware of the staff recommendation that one of the items is going to be obtaining that ahead?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
question for the applicant or representative there? Thank you. Okay, there is nobody else signed up for it, so I'll just open up to the discussion with the commission.
I'll make a motion, we approve for staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and a second by Commissioner Brule. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion carries. Item 2.
Item number 2 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 402-32082 from an AR agricultural residential zone to a C2H highway commercial zone to allow for an office building in the Beaver Dam vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, we don't have the applicant. You want to talk? Okay, go ahead. Please state your name again and your address for the record.
Again, I'm Donna Kraus with Mojave Engineering, and I'm just here to answer any questions that may be relative to the commission.
I appreciate that. Is there any question from the applicant? If not, thank you. I guess there's no question. Okay, any discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 3 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 228-02030 from a C2H 1A highway commercial 1 acre minimum lot size zone to a C2H highway commercial zone to allow for a minor land division in the Fort Mojave vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
I made a mistake. It was seconded by Commissioner Beller, so could you make the correction on the, I'm getting old, my ear is not working very well. Sorry about that.
It was Kelly.
It was Kelly? Yeah. Okay, so we make the correction back to Kelly because I got corrected.
I haven't warmed up yet.
I apologize. No, that's okay. That's all right. If you want to put both of them, that's okay too.
It's both.
Joint venture. Sorry about that. Okay. Do we have nobody has signed up for this item. Do we have the applicant here? Would you like to address the commission? Okay, be that way. All right, thank you.
Take it the safe way.
Okay, I open it up to this discussion. If not, I entertain a motion.
Motion approved for staff recommendations. I'll second.
Okay, let me see if I can get it right this time. We have first by motion by Commissioner Kelly, seconded by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Next item.
Item number 4 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor parcel numbers 225, 33051, and 081A from a C2 general commercial zone to a C2H highway commercial zone to allow for office use, outdoor display, and equipment storage in the Mojave Valley vicinity. We've received one letter of approval. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, do we have the applicant here? Would you like to address the commission? Okay, unless there is a question. Do we have a question, any question for the applicant? Okay, open it up to discussion. Okay, we entertain a motion.
But I recommend approval per staff conditions.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mill, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item number 5 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 25315-023 from an AR 36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR 10A agricultural residential 10-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the old Highway 93 vicinity, Mojave County, Arizona. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions and with the condition that only 3 parcels may be created by this rezone.
Do we have the applicant here? Okay, we have no applicant. I have nobody signed up for this item. Any discussion by the commission?
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Why are you limiting them to 3 parcels, or is that what they're asking for?
It's a 10-acre.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Abbott, the rezone, they currently only have 39 acres on the parcel, and the rezone is to an AR 10A. So the most that they could do with a 10A minimum lot size zone is 3.
Thank you.
Unless they go through the process and changing the,
Correct.
any other question? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Beller, and we have a second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Item number 6 is an evaluation of a request for a special use permit for assessor parcel number 317-57021 to allow for an electronic billboard in a C2H highway commercial zone in the White Hills vicinity. The Mojave County General Plan designates this area as urban and within a scenic routes and vistas area. This area is exempt from the designated sign-free area by the Mojave County zoning ordinance. We've received 2 comments. One comment letter was for information only, wasn't in opposition or for approval, and then 1 letter was opposed. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, do we have the applicant here? Do you have any, oh, just a question, okay. Any question for the applicant? Okay, we have no questions, so I open it up to the discussion for the commission. Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve for staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and a second by Commissioner Beller. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Next item, please. We're going too fast, huh?
Item 7A is an evaluation for a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from a general commercial land use designation to a heavy industrial land use designation for assessor parcel numbers 324-09-011C, 012A, 013A, and 015B in the Kingman vicinity. The applicant requests the amendment to allow for a tow yard and tractor trailer storage. We have received one letter of concern. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have the applicant here? Yes. Would you like to address the commission? Okay. Have you read the letter of concern?
Yes, I believe I spoke to the owner of the property down the phone.
Okay, could you come to the tribune and explain, what's your comment on that letter of concern? And please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Joe Kalis. Address is 4350 North Arizona Street, Building 1.
Thank you.
Basically, her concern was, I guess, her property is adjacent to it, and her main concern was privacy, which, obviously we would do everything we can to keep her happy, but also follow the law that we required.
Okay. So it's my understanding that you've been in business for quite some time there, right?
Not on that property, down the street from them for 6 years in that location.
Okay.
But total 8 years in the Kingman area.
Okay, so your scope of work is going to be, you're changing it to heavy industrial, but your scope of work is going to be just for towing, right?
Towing and parking, and that's it. I have a repair shop elsewhere to where the repair shop would stay on that property and that property only.
And the reason that you go with the heavy industrial, I assume that, staff can elaborate on that, is because that falls into that particular zoning. Is that correct, Chris?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, his particular use falls under the heavy industrial designation under the general plan.
I just want to make sure for the public know that, the word heavy industrial sends the wrong message. And,
I agree.
And for that reason, just wanted to make sure that we elaborate on it, that your intention is not like, having like a heavy industrial thing going on out there, manufacturing or anything like that. It is basically for a towing business.
Yep, towing and parking for transport, and that's it.
I appreciate that. Any questions?
Yes.
Please.
You mentioned you did towing for cars and trucks, or for big trucks also?
Both, yes.
Both, okay.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question possibly to staff. With the heavy industrial, if the current owner decides to sell the property to someone who wants to make batteries or some heavy industrial thing I can't name, does that zoning go with the property, and then that new use would then be allowable because of this change? Or is this restricted just for this property owner for this business?
Chairman is Army Commissioner Verrill. The current item 7A is for the plan amendment. I completely understand the confusion for heavy industrial, if you would allow me to elaborate. As the general plan currently has land use designations, light industrial does not allow for outdoor storage. So although light industrial truly seems like the best fit, as it is written, it is not. So heavy industrial is the plan, the land use designation that we recommended, knowing that the zoning is what's actually enforceable. So the next item for the zoning is a lot more compatible with the specifics of what they plan to do. We have the heavy industrial land use designation, knowing that right now it's the best fit. Should they sell the property, the land use designation and the zoning will be for that property. But they would still need to rezone the property to a heavier use if they wanted to have a battery factory or something similar to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have another question? I'm sorry.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
There was a letter sent concerning proximity to the high school. Part of the property are on a corner lot,
That's correct.
okay? For sake of conversation to help things along, are there the crosswalks marked on the streets to go to the high school and from the high school? Or do you know?
Actually, right there in that intersection, no. Further down in front of the high school, there's 2 crosswalks, I believe. Is there 2 or 1? I know there's 1 for sure where they have the signs, where you actually have to stop for them and everything. But in front of mine, it's actually not directly in front of the high school, but in front of the baseball field that they have there.
That's Lee Williams High School, right? Was it
it's
Kingman?
Kingman Bulldogs.
Oh, Kingman Bulldog, I'm sorry. Yeah, the road is quite wide, actually, in front of it, and they're on the opposite side of the road and kind of away. So if your concern is about the safety of the students,
yes.
right, yeah, they're far away, and as I said, the street is quite wide in that part, you know.
Excuse me.
Is there a that median in the middle of the street?
No,
No?
No.
but again, that is not the jurisdiction of,
Well, I
again,
understand that, but that again, common sense.
right, I understand. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the site map for this gives a really good visual.
Right. Any other question? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I open it up to the discussion by the commission. If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve for staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and a second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion carries. Next item, please.
Item number 7B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessors parcel numbers 324-09-011C, 012A, 013A, and 015B from a C2 1A General Commercial 1 acre minimum lot size zone to a CMO Commercial Manufacturing and Open Lot Storage Zone to allow for a tow yard and vehicle storage in the Kingman vicinity. We received that letter of concern for both 7A and 7B. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay, we have nobody signed up for 7B. Applicant is here if you have any further question on this particular item. Do you have any other comments that you'd like to make? No, sir. Okay, thank you. Okay, we close that, open it up to the
Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry.
discussion, please.
I was just going to make a motion to approve per staff recommendations, item 7B.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Brule and a second by Commissioner Kelly. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Next item, please.
Item number 8 is an evaluation of amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, Section 42 sign ordinance, to allow changes to be made to regulate signs by time, manner, and place. The Department of Development Services is updating the sign ordinance, Section 42 of the Mojave County zoning ordinance. The update will assure that signs are regulated by time, manner, and place, and not content. On June 18, 2015, Reed versus the Town of Gilbert was a case heard by the Supreme Court of the United States concluding that a sign ordinance could not regulate signs based on the content of the sign. In order to be compliant with the ruling, the department proposes updating the Mojave County sign ordinance to regulate signs solely by time, manner, and place. We brought this to you last month, and we gave you a little bit more time to read through it. There are quite a bit of changes or things that we are taking out of the ordinance. A lot of things are also meant to kind of help simplify it a little bit. If you look in the exemption portion of the sign ordinance, for the exempt signs, that's where a lot of them were taken out. We try to evaluate any of the signs that required you to look at the sign to tell, okay, what kind of sign is this? And we've kind of created a new way of including all these signs, and it's under J, which includes any sign that is not to exceed 6 square feet. You're limited at 1 per parcel, and basically anything that we had previously can kind of fit into that. Later on, we have under temporary signs, where anything above 6 square feet, they would have to come in and get a sign permit to make sure it meets some of our requirements. But open to any questions or suggestions that you may have.
Okay, this is the applicant is Mojave County. And we just, not long ago, we had this sign ordinance, reviewed and went through the Board of Supervisors, but it seems like, there was a case law that, we had this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Chris to elaborate on it, if you don't mind. Give us some history, background, and what your department did.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Just, I think, slightly before we finished the changes to the sign ordinance, this case, Reed versus the town of Gilbert, and yes, that is the town of Gilbert, Arizona, was decided by the Supreme Court. It did take probably about 8 or 9
Chris,
months.
could you move the microphone closer to you?
Oh, okay. It did. Oh, it's.
Sorry about that. You go ahead.
I've been told that my microphone was not working. Okay. It did take about 8 or 9 months for the attorneys to kind of conclude as to what this all meant. It actually was fairly clear. The town of Gilbert regulated a series of signs that were associated with a church, and they based it on what they read. As you can tell, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. The conclusion of the court was basically that you shouldn't have to read a sign to determine whether or not it was legal. Part of that goes back to the First Amendment issues that have always plagued signs. If I give my opinion on a sign, local government shouldn't regulate it. What we should be regulating are those signs that advertise goods and services, and then we should only regulate them by time, place, and manner. The conclusion of that was that the department had to go through the sign ordinance and ask itself, do we have to read that sign to say what it is? And with many of the signs, such as real estate signs, which we had carved out a special category for, the answer turned out to be yes, we did have to read the sign to determine where it fell in our sign code. So we had to, as Mr. Holtery noted, change how we looked at those signs and how we regulated them. That puts us into regulating not the face of the sign, what it says, but rather, what size is it, how big is it, where is it placed on the property. More difficult for us is, is it a First Amendment issue or is it advertising a good or service? And one of the paradoxes that we face, of course, is in order to tell whether or not it's a First Amendment sign or whether or not it's advertising a good or service, you do have to read it. And that's been kind of the caution from the attorneys and this is not just our own staff. This is kind of a collective set of local government attorneys statewide. Is that you do have to run a balance here, and that's what we've tried to do, was run a balance where we could tell what are we dealing with an advertising sign, or are we dealing with a First Amendment sign? Our ordinance always has said First Amendment signs are Also, we tried to simplify parts of the sign code. We thought that while we were in there, we had 3 years' worth of experience with the changes that were made in 2015. So that allowed us to go forward and say, okay, we think that there are a few items that we could simplify for both ourselves and the public.
Thank you. Up to now, I believe that, pretty much the land use ordinance was talking about the size of the, the sign and, not the content of it as much.
Mr. Chairman, Mojave County has not gotten into regulating content like many
Exactly.
cities have. However, we did carve out certain statuses for signs that you actually had to read the sign to tell what status it fell into. And we were fairly comfortable with the fact that carving out those special statuses did run afoul of Reed versus the town of Gilbert. I mean, one of the justices very definitely said in one of their opinions was the fact that if you have to read it in order to tell how to regulate it, you're not regulating right.
That's right.
And so that forced us to look at those special statuses. Real estate is the best one I can come up with. Political signs was another one, although we backed away from political signs in 2015. But we had like community development signs and a whole series of signs that in order to tell where they fell in our regulatory process, we had to go out and read them. And that's exactly what the decision said. We couldn't continue to regulate on the basis of what we read.
So Chris, what kind of headaches do you foresee for your department?
Actually, the biggest headache I see has always been a headache with signs, and that is somebody expecting us to go out and regulate a sign based on what is stated on the sign. We had a sign, but I would also point out that most of those signs turn out to be what I would consider falling under the First Amendment anyway. I think we did have a commercial sign that somebody found offensive in Fort Mojave about 15 years ago. We will continue to perhaps get some of those, but unless they're truly offensive, they fall under the legal definition of offensive, what actually is pretty onerous. We're not going to be able to regulate those. As far as, I think there was a sign in Golden Valley years ago that basically said the Kingman Police Department was made up of a bunch of idiots. That's still free speech. We can agree with it, we cannot agree with it. It's still free speech, and it remains today. It was at that time a sign we could not regulate, and it remains that today.
So pretty much it's going to be the same that we had before, and it's going to be complaint-driven. If somebody complains about it, you look into it.
That's exactly right, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Our signs are complaint-driven, and when we get a complaint, we'll look into it. The one exception to that might be if somebody puts up a sign that actually inhibits traffic. It might be that either the sheriff's department or public works steps in and make sure that the safe traveling is reinstated.
Thank you. Bob, do you have anything to add to it? Since you guys have started this mess?
No, I think
your colleagues.
I think Chris Ballard covered it quite well, that we have to step away from regulation of content. And that applies to commercial signs as well. There is actually some dicta in the case in Reed versus Gilbert that says, just because you're advertising something for sale or good or service doesn't mean that you don't have the free speech rights to do so. So I think that the Development Services proposal is sound and it's consistent with Reed versus Gilbert. We may have some bumps along the road depending upon what sort of litigation we encounter, but hopefully that will be rare and we'll be able to resolve those.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff?
I have a question for staff. Did you,
Commissioner Abbott?
Melody?
I'm going to save it for the end, I think.
There's a line item, real estate or property for sale, rent or lease sign, any sign pertaining to the sale, lease, or rental of land of the buildings. That you've lined out. What was the purpose of taking that out? What did that do that was a problem? And I guess the question is, why did you remove that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Abbott, like Chris mentioned, real estate sign, if you're looking at a sign and you want to determine whether or not it's a real estate sign, you would have to read it. Or if it's a lease or rent sign, you'd have to read it to tell whether or not that sign is a lease or real estate sign. What we've done is we've taken out anything that requires you to read the sign to determine what it is, and we've created a caveat. If you look in your sign ordinance J, and basically any sign that you would like to place on your property, as long as it doesn't exceed the 6 square feet, you're limited to 1. So if you wanted to put a real estate sign on your property, then that counts as your sign. You're limited to 1. We're not going to look at whether or not it's real estate or a lease sign or just your free speech sign. We're just saying you're only limited to 1 sign per property, and it can't be more than 6 square feet.
So that removes the point of the purpose of the sign?
No. The purpose of the sign could still stand. If you're trying to sell your house, then you can still put your real estate sign in front of your house. We're just regulating it based on you can only have 1 sign and it can't be bigger than 6 square feet. We're not saying you can only have a real estate sign in front of your lot. We're just saying you can have any sign, can't be bigger than 6 square feet.
So basically, you're not excluding real estate or the real estate advertisement.
Right.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, do we have, please?
Got a really dumb question. Who's gonna tell the realtors about what size signs they can use and how many signs per lot they can use?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mill, the 6 square feet is larger than your typical real estate sign anyways. And so I think it would fall under the complaint-driven thing. If somebody has a huge real estate sign out there, then we're going to go take a look at it if we get a complaint, and then we'll contact them and say, hey, this is bigger than what's allowed, and go from there. We're not going to start throwing out tickets at them and say, hey, you got to pay us a fine, but we'll work with them and help them out. Yeah.
Does that go for the commercial, the properties also that same size?
No, so the commercial signs, commercial zones have different regulations for pole signs, for signs mounted on the building. They can have bigger signs. We're not regulating what they can put on those signs, but we're regulating where they can put their pole signs, where they can put their building-mounted signs, and how big they can be, dependent on how wide the right-of-way is and speed of traffic and stuff like that.
Commissioner Mill, those real estate associates, they're very cost conscious. So, Commissioner Kelly, you want to elaborate on that?
There are some that are and some that aren't.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
We should note that if a realtor is looking for a larger sign, there is a permitting process to accommodate them. So they're not shut out of the ability to do that.
Plus state and national real estate agencies govern that.
Mhm.
Okay, any other discussion, questions? Okay, I just want to say that, the staff did a great job. I went through the whole thing, and it seems like there was a lot of attention paid to the details. The tables changed, and I noticed that was quite a work, so thank you for that. Do we have any other discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn, or
whatever you want to do, Matty, let's get out of here.
It's a meeting. We're not there yet.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move.
To approve the sign ordinance.
Okay. Did you second that?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a seconded by Commissioner Brule. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Next. Keith wants to leave. He had enough. Let's see, I'm trying to get to the end of it, okay? All right, I believe that's, takes care of that one. Just let me see what I have on the list. Okay, any announcements by the commission, by the staff? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we do also have before the commission item number 9.
Well, that's what I was asking on the next item.
Oh, I apologize, I did not hear you. Okay. Evaluation of proposed Mojave County Ordinance 2018-06, an ordinance setting forth an amendment to Mojave County Ordinance Number 2018-04, which adopted Mojave County building codes. Purpose is to clarify reporting responsibilities within this ordinance and other clarifications. The Development Services is requesting that clarification be provided to the reporting structure within the ordinance and to more closely match the department's organizational structure. Also clarified in the proposed amendment is the recognition that any policies or procedures drafted to guide the implementation of the codes cannot be more onerous than provided in the reference codes. This is an amendment to the ordinance that adopted the building codes and the associated fees. And the purpose of the ordinance is basically to give some clarification within the building code ordinance itself as to what the reporting structure within the department is. And I'd like to point out that this reporting structure currently exists within the department, and it's has for many years. So this is a reporting structure that any builder in the county has already worked under. And it just provides, or it makes clear that there's some additional accountability in the system. Also, there is a recognition in the ordinance, being added to the ordinance, of some instructions to local governments that come through as Arizona State Revised Statutes 11-1600 et seq. And some of you will remember this when it came out as the old SB 1590. But it was a bill in the legislature that was intended to give greater accountability in the bureaucratic system when that system was making administrative decisions, and it imposed on local governments some of the licensing criteria that had already been imposed by the legislature on state agencies. And part of that accountability was that you couldn't, while issuing or closing out a license, which a building permit is considered to be, while working in that licensing process, you couldn't become all of a sudden more restrictive or more onerous than the laws and the ordinances that backed up that particular license. And so one of the changes being made is giving recognition to that statement that's already in state statute. I'm open for any questions the commission may have.
Just as a background, Code Advisory Board has reviewed this revision, amendment, and which Commissioner Walker and myself are part of that Code Advisory Board, and we basically made a recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission and also later to the Board of Supervisors for the approval. It is, something that was, in my opinion, kind of past due, and I think it was really helping to make that correction within the code ordinance. So if you have any questions, go ahead.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I recall, and I believe you're referring to it, the building official has statutory, for Arizona Revised Statute, has statutory requirements as far as some of the things that they do. And I can see where you're trying to get this administratively or codifying it, but is that confusing for them? For instance, if the state ordinance says the building official is responsible for X, Y, and Z, and then ours says that they report to someone else, but isn't that building official still required to follow this? Do you understand the confusion I'm looking at? And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's why you're trying to clarify it, but I'm still confused as to what position does it put the building official in if there's a conflict between, say, what they're directed to do and their interpretation of what they think they should be doing? I mean, it just seems ripe for some kind of possible problem. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Burrow, members of the commission, I believe what the state statute says is that the counties, when the counties adopt a building code, they have to adopt a nationally recognized code, which Mojave County has done in adopting the ICC codes. The ICC codes do give quite a bit of power and decision-making authority to the chief building official. And the building codes, the fire codes give it to basically the fire chief. And the purpose of, having that decision-making authority there is that you want somebody who is knowledgeable, experienced, meets certain credentials to be making decisions on whether something meets the code or not. And those will still stand. The first question is always, does this meet the code? We do, however, get a lot of questions about, well, what if I tweak this method or tweak this material? Would it still meet the code? And those decisions still have to be made. I think what the purpose of this, adding in this extra level, is doing is, it is, I think, adding more accountability to the system. The base question is still going to be, does it fit the code? What the reporting structure does is it makes sure that, one of your concerns is abuse. And I think additional reporting criteria in our structure actually is a check on that abuse. You can't have them giving away things or allowing people to use construction materials or construction methods that do not comply with the code. You also can't have the system become overbearing, start requiring things, extra things that are not in the code. And that's the purpose of inserting that extra reporting in there, is to make sure that those checks and balances are there, that the criteria and the code is being met without, inventing new requirements or without become overbearing.
Thank you. I'm very clear. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. And again, the building official, in most cases, they have their own interpretation of the code. And again, let's say that there is a dispute between the building official and a contractor. The contractor has the option of filing, for the code advisory board to review that particular case and see if that interpretation is there or not. So there are some mechanism in place to be able to, check and balances. And I think this is just like one extra measure to be able to help the customers and making sure that it would alleviate any problems in the future. So, any other discussion, questions, anything like that? Yes, Chris?
I do want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for covering the Building Code Advisory Board.
Oh, no
It was on my list of things to talk about, and I just skipped right over
Well,
it.
to be honest with you, since Director Walsh is sick and was not here, I thought, when I was asking, I thought that maybe you tabled that for the next meeting. So, for that reason, I just, kind of skipped over it because I didn't hear that item number 9 is going to be on it. So anyway, I appreciate that. Any other discussion, I think? So if not, I entertain a motion. Why this thing is talking?
I'll second Mr. Walker's motion to close.
Okay.
Adjourn.
Well, no, we're not done yet. We
Still on
have
number
to.
9.
Everybody's anxious to go home. We need to have a motion for this particular item. Approve per staff recommendation, sir? Yes?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve for staff
I'll
recommendation.
second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and seconded by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Now we can talk about, go ahead, calendar and other things. Please, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, it's that time of year again. Arizona state statute requires the commission to adopt a calendar. For the year, I will remind the commission that the only items the commission is adopting is basically the venue for your own meeting. You'll be adopting the place this meeting is held, the date it's held, and the time it's held. Presently, it's held obviously in the Board of Supervisors auditorium in the administrative building. It's held at 10 o'clock a.m., the second Wednesday of the month. You will notice there are a lot of other items on your calendar. Those basically tell you what staff is doing between meetings. That contains in it the deadlines for our advertising of items that are submitted to us for review and presentation to you. It contains deadlines for your items to move on to the Board of Supervisors. So hopefully when your people walk up to you and ask you, well, what does the staff do in the meantime? Certainly you can move these items through faster than you do. You will have a calendar that you can show them or discuss with them that shows that no, the time, that amount of time that they might think is there really is not. And I want to thank Scott and Dina for putting together the calendar. I think they were almost a dual act this year. I don't think anybody helped them. If I'm wrong, I apologize to that
Very
person.
nice and
So-
colorful. Okay, so do we need to have a motion on that calendar?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we need to have a.
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar.
Okay, stated.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Beller, a second by Commissioner Walker. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Anything else, Chris?
I think there's one more item, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
The commission's dinner,
Lunch, you mean?
or excuse me, lunch. It used to be a dinner, and
Right.
I've never gotten past that.
Okay.
The commissioner's luncheon is scheduled for your, just after your next meeting. We kind of have two options this year for venue. We either have El Palacio or the Dam Bar. And we were interested in asking the commission, what was your preference for,
I don't know if you want to break the tradition of Denver. I don't know. It's up to everybody. Okay.
I'd vote for Dam Bar.
Okay. So I guess Danbar. I don't see any. Okay. Danbar it is.
No
Thank you.
reflection on El Palacio. I go there often.
Okay.
Dina has an invitation for all of you that kind of gives you some instructions.
Right.
So we'll need for you to pick one of those up. Make sure you get one from her before you leave. I'll remind you that we'll need to know a menu selection, and the invitation includes the menu that's available to you, as well as the cost if you wish to bring a guest.
Thank you. Any other item, Chris? Well, if not, I have a couple of announcements. First of all, I'd like to thank Supervisor Bishop, as always, joining us and coming to our meetings. I can say she's the only supervisor who's basically loyal to our meetings and always, shows up. So thank you very much for coming over. The other thing is I'd like to wish Commission and also staff a very happy Thanksgiving, a safe Thanksgiving. Hopefully that, wherever you are, enjoy yourself with your family and all that. And last but not least, I'm going to make an announcement that after like 10, 15 years of being on the commission, I'm going to resign from my chair. I've been around 2 rounds of land use review, 2 rounds of general plan, 2 or 3 rounds of code advisory board, animal ordinance, and also flood control meetings that we attended. And I think it's time for me to, after like 29 years being in the community, and I think 10 to 15 years on the commission, to retire from my position as a chair. I know that only few, like I believe Commissioner Abbott and I are the only 2 from the commission from the old 3-member, Board of Supervisors, and on the staff, I think Greg and Chris are the only 2 that I know of, and maybe Bob. So anyway, I want to thank, it was a privilege, it was an honor. I'll attend the December meeting, and that will be my last meeting to chair. So I wish everybody good luck and thank you. And it was an honor and privilege for me to volunteer my time for Mojave County.
Resignation rejected.
Second motion.
So now we can go ahead and go for the motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
Okay, we have Commissioner Walker and we have Commissioner Abbott. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Oh, where's my thing? I can do this. There you go.